In this video, let's take a look at the difference between static segments and dynamic segments. So each of these segments are going to play different roles within your data set and how they interact. So it's pretty basic, but we're just going to dive into it and get a little more information here. So first off, static doesn't change. The content within that segment doesn't change unless something is pushed to it. Dynamic is always changing as something occurs. So let's go through different scenarios of when you would use a static versus a dynamic segment. So first off, here's our segment builder. So if I hit plus, create a blank segment, come in here. So if I want to look at, for example, a customer, like if I want to look at a segment, maybe I want to look at it to build a customer profile dashboard or something along those lines. I may say, okay, I want to just look at my customer value segment at this point in time right now, just to build out a dashboard for it. So I can go ahead and I can say, okay, it is lesser equal than 2. So my top 2 tiers of customer value segment. So this way it'll return our best customers and we can see what that looks like. So we're going to go ahead and create this segment, and I'll leave the dynamic segment unchecked, hit create. So now I have my top 2 tiers of customer value segments. Obviously on my test account it shows 0, but this would give a count of how many customers fall under that for you, and that would show up. The dynamic ones show dynamic because that can be ever changing. So it wouldn't report a number specifically. So now that I have this, I could jump over into my analytics. I could look at the customer profile dashboard by segment for that specific segment, and I can start to see different parameters of what my top value customers fall under. That way I could build segments based off of that information for future marketing. Now that I've got a dynamic segment here created, we've got a static segment, I want to show you kind of how we would use these different segments within journeys. So another time where we would use a dynamic segment would be if I'm looking to create kind of a recurring time trigger to send out a marketing message to individuals. I would build out a dynamic segment, but I would tie in some date information to that dynamic segment. So if I want to take customers that purchased this week, I would say transaction the transaction is after or equal to 7 days ago. We're going to run this journey for anybody that has purchased over the course of the last week. So we want to include the entire 7 days. So we want to make sure that we do after or equal to 7 days ago is going to come in. I click this as a dynamic segment, hit create, and now I've got that. So now let's go over to journeys and let's explore how to use static versus dynamic segment. So in customer journeys, so we would use we could use this segment trigger. The segment trigger is only usable with static segments. So if somebody has gone into a segment from maybe another journey or some other process, they would then go into a static segment. And I'll show you how that works here in just a second. And then you can use that segment here for these purposes. So hit apply. The other is a recurring time trigger. So on a recurring time trigger, I need to generate that based off of the segment. But this is where our customers that have purchased this week comes in handy. So I click on that segment, and then I can go ahead and start this whenever. I'm going to run it weekly. And so I can just say I want to run it every week, and we'll just run it on Tuesday. If you run it more than one day and you're running a 7-day cycle, then it's going to send that message out to each of those customers that within the past 7 days. So they're going to get 7 different messages. So if you want it to be a shorter time frame, you want it to be daily, then on our segment, we would just say 1 day ago. So anybody that has purchased within the last day, and then we could do a daily process, or you could do it every other day or something along those lines. But for this purpose, we're doing weekly, so we're going to send this out every Tuesday and then hit apply. And so every Tuesday, that email is going to pull any purchases over the last 7 days, and it's going to send that messaging out, right? So, and then if I want to add other parameters, I can throw in and I can check data field. So maybe I want to check and see, okay, they purchased this product, but they didn't purchase this product, so let's target them to purchase this product. So kind of like a remarketing tactic, or like an abandoned cart type of deal, something along those lines, that maybe they came in and didn't execute on buying this one thing that complements this other thing that they did buy. So you're enticing them to come back and purchase that. So that could be, there's a number of ways that you could do that. So we can go ahead, we can pull in our web form node, and then we could use our web form on the website to go ahead and add somebody to a segment. So we grab the add to segment node, and then anybody that fills out that form, I can add them to any of my static segments. So this is where now customer fills out a form on my website or in a kiosk or whatever, they're then dumped into that segment. And then I can use the segment trigger to go ahead and generate that next journey. So they filled out this information. Now I can go ahead and execute off of that. So I can also remove customers from segments. Again, that's just static segments. Time trigger is segment based. So I would choose my segment here for my time trigger event. So if I wanted to just send out I want to schedule my marketing message, and maybe I want to do a journey of 3 to 4 messages, I would start with a specific time trigger, send that out, and then I could do a resend, I could do a follow-up message. And so this is great for Black Friday promotions, for other holiday promotions, for monthly giveaways, any of that type of stuff that you're going to plan out, maybe a series of emails. We'll talk about this more in other videos, right? But I can use these check has transaction to kick somebody out of a journey. And then they wouldn't get the continual messaging, right? So that's how we would use static versus dynamic segments. Again, dynamic segments are updated continually as customers come in and have a certain action, whether it's all customers, whether it's certain transactions. In this case, anybody that's had a transaction within the last 7 days. I can set a number of parameters off of that. I can do dynamic segments that involve the enriched data fields. So looking at my customers that are male, that are female, that have children, that own a home, that don't have children, that are married, that are single, etc. So lots of opportunities to build out segments, really hyper-target my messaging to my customers, make it personalized, and make it more profitable. That's an increased revenue to you because your customers are more engaged and more interested in what you have to share because it's more applicable to them. So enjoy. Hopefully that was helpful in the difference between segments and how you would use and execute on those segments.